we just talk about like pain is a complex thing, and I had like a bit of a multi-layered question for you. So, and you're talking about how we perceive pain. Your perception of it is biased by your experiences. Somebody else's perception of their pain is biased by their experiences. The fact that I'm even using the word perception to describe pain as well is like people are like, no, isn't it just this objective thing? So what do you? Because me and Umar also, we deal with clients in varying degrees of pain. So I've essentially built a career around people who have niggles, joint niggles, and especially long-term back problems, so chronic back problems, to actually help them out of that pain and feel mobile again, feel strong again, and just actually feel like they've regained the confidence in their body that they once had.
Yep.
And so what do you think people actually need to know about pain to improve their relationship with it, number one, to improve their relationship with their body, and then also to get themselves out of pain and stay out of it?
I think number one is that pain is a warning system. It doesn't have to reflect damage. So you can start to experience pain because your brain is perceiving that a tissue, a muscle, ligament, tendon, joint, is coming to the end of its ability to deal with stress. So if you put stress on any form of tissue for long enough, eventually it will fail. So that could be like a constant load, or it could be repetitive load. But if you hold that type of force on it for long enough, any tissue will fail you. So pain can start to occur when that tissue is starting to fatigue and it's getting to the point of injury. So it's really good to listen to pain and recognize, okay, I'm getting some pain now. I need to either change the stress on me or give it a break and come back later. It doesn't mean that you've actively injured something. So I'm putting up loft insulation at the moment, and I'm boarding over it so that we still have a storage space. And if in the future we want to go up into the loft, then we've already got a floor there to go into. And it's miserable work. It's just the work. You're wearing a full respirator because it's super disgusting up there. You can imagine they're big rolls. There's not enough room. It's little slope spaces. So I'm 6'4". So I'm crippled over in like the worst space. It's just awful.
I have my own personal experience of that. Having done that with my sister when I was about 13 years old, both of us in the loft, taking instruction from my dad, being like, "Don't do this, do that, don't do this."
That's amazing.
Crazy times.
That's amazing. Great idea.
He got you up there because you're small enough to fit in and nimble enough to do the work, right?
His big ass wasn't going to get up there, so we had to.
That's amazing. So the other day, I basically got to the stage where my back was really starting. It had gone through the kind of odd niggle to a kind of constant burning pain around kind of my left QL. And so I climbed
for people who don't know what the QL is.
Sorry, quadratus lumborum. So that's a muscle that kind of runs from your from the lower ribs, and it's going to run down over to the kind of left hip, the back of your left hip, like the pelvis. Big, powerful muscle. And obviously it's just having a hell of a workout in a position that I'm not used to working. So in a deep squat or on hands and knees for a long period of time, which is not something I spend a lot of time doing. Although perhaps I should, right, guys? But anyway, so I'm getting this proper burn from kind of left lower back. And I look in the mirror and I'm proper wonky. Like I basically am alarmed. I looked in the mirror, I was like, oh my God, I've blown a disc. That's a disc injury. A patient who comes in to see me and has that antalgic posture, so their body is shifted off to one side, like that's often a sign of a disc injury. And so I just took a couple of breaths and I was like, okay, just calmly think about this. You've been stuck up there for about 6 hours, which is too long. Yeah. I would have told anyone else, break it into half-an-hour chunks, but I had a job to do and we got 2 kids, so 6 hours. So I got some tools, did some stretching, said to my wife, old man style, I just need to lie down for a bit. Did some stretching, did some self-massage, and basically just lay on the sofa like an old man. Had some water, had some food, got out of bed, got up, and was still pretty stiff, but the burning pain had gone. And looked in the mirror, and basically what was happening was when I was bending forward, you would see my kind of sternum was shifting, obviously, kind of left of where my belly button was. And then after having done a bit of stretching, lay down for about half an hour, that was no longer happening. So I was like, okay, what it was it's not a disc, because if it was a disc, that wouldn't have changed in half an hour. There's too much swelling, there's too much pain and chronic injury there. What you were getting is muscular spasm, saying you're stressing out your back too much. I'm going to lock everything down and try and protect you, but I'm telling you this is hurting because you're running out of time. So then take some time off, take all the pressure off. The muscles will say, okay, the stress is gone, they relax, and I'm back to normal movement. Next day, a little bit stiff. 2 days later, absolutely fine. So it's that knowing that pain is a warning system. It doesn't mean you are injured. It can mean you're injured, and if it's constantly there, and it's every time you do the same movement, and you've tried doing, you've tried stretching and doing stuff like that, that's when I would say go and, if you've got pain for more than a month or 6 weeks and it hasn't gone by itself, that's when I'd say just go and see someone soon. The other thing to know about pain is it's adaptive. So the mechanism of pain can dictate if it's short-term or long-term. So any injury, we call it peripheral sensitization. So what that means is if I tear a muscle in my shoulder here, it will be more sensitive to touch. It will be more sensitive when I move it, because again, the warning system is saying, please give this a rest so I can heal it. The problem is if the pain is severe enough or goes on for long enough, you get a constant bombardment of pain into your spinal cord, and then from your spinal cord up to your brain, and those different areas start to adapt, and they become more and more receptive to that pain. So now I can experience more and more pain that is less and less real. So if initially I've torn a muscle here and it's painful to touch, 3 months down the line, it might be more painful to touch, even though the injury is healed, because the nervous system has adapted and become very effective at detecting pain. If it goes on for long enough, the pain can start to spread to what we call secondary sites. So pains, areas that are perfectly healthy, but start to experience pain because the pain system has become so strong, it tells its cousins, its brothers and sisters, look, we're still in pain. I need to tell everybody, warn him that his shoulder is still injured, even though it may not be so real. So that pain science is a real thing, but it's trying to, as a clinician, and I include you guys as clinicians, is trying to differentiate, is it a warning system pain? This person is not controlling flexibility and stability well enough, so their mobility is sacrificed when they're doing a certain task, sitting on a road bike for an hour, their low back is starting to give them a warning signal that they're getting towards the end of their tolerance? Or is it peripheral sensitization? There's actually an injury there that we need to try and help heal. That might involve doing certain movements or exercises or training to take the stress off that injured area while it heals up. Or is it now secondary sensitization? So the injury actually might not be that bad at all, but they're experiencing pain. I'm now experiencing pain down the whole of my left arm and down my left back, where you need to find the original source of pain. That's the key to it. So if I originally tore my shoulder here, and now I've got whole pain down my whole left side, you as a clinician need to know where was the pain originally to assess them properly. And the research shows if you can get rid of the initial pain, a lot of that secondary pain goes away very quickly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that from that attachment point, right?
Yeah. So that can be really
cool. Everything's spread.
Sorry, say that again?
So it's like from that initial anchor, everything is spread from there, right? That's Absolutely. Why we go in there first.
Absolutely. So it can be hard because sometimes people forget, because if they've had pain long enough, they can't remember how it originally started. So it gets complicated and it can be really tough. But that's the key, is trying to say, where was the original source of pain or stress, and try and fix that. Don't chase.
Don't stop chasing pain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
That's fascinating.
Really
and then,
interesting.
Yeah, because I think that's super helpful for people to understand how pain actually works, because it feels like such a catastrophic thing. But actually, when you understand that it's a warning system, and whether you do have pain or don't have pain, whether you do have an injury or don't have an injury, it's still good to look at it like that, because you realize that a lot of the outcome is still in your hands.
Yeah.
Because that influences. So going back to the stuff about perception as well, because it's going to influence how well you handle the pain and your subjective experience of that pain as well. And yet the predictive models and everything like that. So kind of going back to like incorporating a little bit of how emotions are made and the concepts that were laid out in that. If we're like, the less aware we are of the kind of the nuance of, let's say in this case, the pain, the longer the pain can last, the more intense it could be potentially. But if we're able to have, in the book she describes it as emotional granularity, where it comes to emotions, the more precise you can be about the emotions that you feel, the better control you have over your experiences. And then trying to do the same thing with pain, do you think that applies as well? So trying to just literally, instead of it being like, this is happening to me, or I am in pain, instead of I am in pain, thinking this is happening to me, what can I do about it? What's my experience of it? And kind of detaching yourself away from it slightly to help you overcome it. What's a good way to do that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's really, really good. To try and look at it, there's research to show that if people imagine a painful situation from in their own body, or if they imagine that they're looking at themselves from like a third person perspective, so there's a camera looking at them, and they describe their pain, where it is, how it is, stuff like that, the person who describes it from a third person perspective will generally say it's less debilitating. They're suffering less. So the pain might still be there. They're suffering less because you're viewing it from someone else's perspective. And I think that's really important. And it's not easy because it sucks when when your back hurts.
You feel like you're in it, right?
Yeah, it's awful. It can be really awful. So I think it's important as a clinician not to make your patient or yourself feel guilty that they haven't controlled their pain well, because the last thing you want is guilt or anxiety. That's always going to make things worse. So it's trying to help someone accept that they are in pain, that it's not the end of the world. The pain nearly always will get better. It's just trying to find how can we do it the quickest. And like you said, it's trying to say when, how, and why does it hurt? Because a lot of patients will say to me, it's just painful all day. I say, okay, so when? Breakfast? Yeah, it's painful at breakfast. Okay, and an hour after breakfast, it's still painful? Yeah, it's still there. Okay, give me a number. And you just really get them to tune in. And then by the end of it, it's like, well, it's not there all day, is it? It's painful for the first hour of the day. It's stiff for the next hour of the day. But by the afternoon, you're doing everything you want to do. You're pissed off because the next morning it's painful again, which I get. But that gives you a lot more control of the situation. Your brain its model of the world is to control your environment. That's what it's trying to do. It's just trying to control your environment as well as it can. And it gets really frustrated and anxious and angry and aggressive when its model of the world doesn't work. So for you or me, healthy guys who love exercise and take pride in our health and our fitness, to have back pain every day, so you can't do your BJJ, you can't do your mobility work, that's like, my model of the world doesn't work. I've done everything right, and now my back hurts. And so you and me would really suffer in that situation, I think, because you're like, well, I'm an expert in this. I know everything about this. Why is my back not getting better? Whereas the average Joe, who maybe doesn't care about it, I just sit in the chair all day. It doesn't really matter to me if my back hurts because I'm actually more comfortable in the chair. They might actually do better than us, despite the fact that they might be in worse shape. So trying to frame it is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, framing it, that's a great way to put it, is framing the situation, framing the pain. And because of the fact that you get so engrossed in it, it can feel like it's difficult that there's a way out. But also kind of looking to a brighter future and saying, actually, future me doesn't have to be in pain. Future me can be fine. And how long that takes depends on several factors, but one of them is definitely your perception of where you see yourself in a few months, a week from now, a few months from now, a year from now, like what you're doing with yourself and just working towards that as well.